My name is Chad David DeLita. Figure this out. I'm running for mayor of Poetry. Me and my family moved to Poetry a few years back. I live here in Poetry with my beautiful wife, Jacqueline. I have a 17-year-old son, aspiring golfer, and I also have my brother living at my house as well. He's a 4-tour in Afghanistan combat veteran, so he's enjoying the peaceful serenity of Poetry every day with us. A little about myself. I'm one of 4 siblings. I'm a businessman, entrepreneur, neighbor, and friend to many. The reason why I've decided to run for mayor is really to kind of keep Poetry just the way it is. A lot of us, I would imagine, love Poetry the way it is. We like Poetry just how it's always been. Part of my platform is going to be really to keep regulation, what our neighbors do, and all that is kind of off the page in terms of what we're going to try to instill with the restrictions and other things that I'm kind of hearing about that got me a little bit worried. Poetry is an amazing town. My mom-in-law and my father-in-law live in Poetry. I brought my mom back to Texas from New Jersey not too long ago, and I got her about 5 minutes east of Poetry technically, but she's 5 minutes away. So I love everything about it. I want to make sure that we do the basics. We take care of the roads. We fix the problems that have become in terms of potholes, and we've been kind of abandoned by the counties, I'd say, in terms of actually getting that taken care of, and I know I can get that done. I think most of the people that voted yes for incorporation really voted for us to become a town, but not to really become a city. I think with the encroachment of annexation coming north from Terrell, Roy City coming south, I think the purpose of us becoming a town is to really keep Poetry, as opposed to make Poetry a real city, suburban type city. Because I think we all know there's Faith, there's Roy City, there's Terrell and Forney. If we wanted to live there, we probably would have chose there. Most of us want to be in Poetry for the country, the freedom, the liberty to kind of do what we want, build our own American dream. And if I get your vote for mayor, I'll help to keep it exactly where it's been. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you very much. And good timing on that one. All right, our other candidate is going to be Tara Sinkovich, and here you go.
Hi, I'm Tara Sinkovich. Let's scoot this down. A few years ago, my husband and I bought some commercial land here in Poetry in Faith. Not quite sure what we were supposed to do with it. After a year of recovering from the expense of it and praying, we were pleasantly surprised when James Poston said that he was retiring and asked us to purchase his equipment, offer jobs to his people, meaning his employees, and take care of his customers. We were humbled, honored, and frankly, a little bit terrified. A retail feed store was something that we had never done before. But then we realized that being ranchers for a couple of decades, that we'd actually been preparing for it for years. While I grew up with a physical therapist father and a bookkeeping mother, Kevin's parents had a retail restaurant for many years. I worked with him for about 3 of those years in high school and then summers through college. As high school sweethearts, we worked through college and paid on our own student loans for 5 years post-graduation. 35 years later, we're still happily married. I worked about 7 years in the medical field, desperately trying to help patients become healthier and live longer. After our son was born, I chose to stay at home for several years, but a couple of years in, my husband convinced me that as much as a source of needed income, to have a part-time manufacturing business out of our garage. During this time, we bought our first few lots in Poetry, and in the mid-90s, put 4 cows on it. We depended on the experience of Kevin's agricultural business degree, some, but mostly on the experience of some ranchers like Dale Bennett and a few others. As our children's college fund grew, we saved to purchase adequate lands and a more substantial herd. We became founding parents of the Poetry Community Christian School because Ann Horan came to our Sunday school classroom at the Poetry Baptist Church and asked for volunteers. So we put in many long hours there, not only renovating, but then I became an almost full-time volunteer in charge of developing the volunteer systems for the school for 8 years. I was privileged to begin many of the new systems, write standards, and eventually train leaders to head these departments. I once gave up an offer for a $50,000 a year job so that I could be the parent partner coordinator for free, simply because I knew it was what I was called to do. That was my contribution, and I could make a difference. When my husband decided to start his own business after the decline of 2008, it was a little risky, but we forged ahead. 11 years later, we have 10 employees in our manufacturing business dealing with improving water quality for fish and ponds, aquariums, and fish farming business. I became both president and chief financial officer. The accounting I had in college was helpful, but mostly it just took a lot of 60-hour work weeks. Meanwhile, on the ranch, we raised fruit, vegetables, hay, dogs, rabbits, goats, donkeys, cows, and horses. I love poetry. It's been the best years of my life. I know my children had a better experience by being raised on the farm and ranch, and I want future children of poetry to have that. My entire desire is to protect poetry and save the farms for our children and our grandchildren. After them, to have those experiences of nurturing things and watching them grow, having responsibilities and seeing them through, that basically is my reason for my entire effort here. And I feel compelled by Providence to do so. Just like organizing systems at the new school, crafting a manufacturing business, forging a new retail business, and spearheading the successful incorporation efforts for poetry, I would like an opportunity in pioneering this new poetry governance. I therefore really appreciate your vote in this amazing place called poetry.
Thank you. Read his responses to the first couple of questions, so I'm just going to let her, oh no, she's going to give her bio, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead with your bio. His bio.
Hi y'all, I'm Haley Dennis, my husband's Matthew Dennis. This is our daughter Logan, and this is about as transparent as you can get with your wife and your baby delivering your bio for you. He's a full-time fireman over at Balch Springs Fire Department, and so that's why he couldn't be here tonight. But anywho, I'll get started reading his bio. My name is Matthew Dennis, candidate for Poetry Town Council. I'm a Poetry Texas native. My family has deep roots in poetry that go back as far as 1848. I graduated from Poetry Community Christian School in 2010, moved to Breckenridge, Texas to start my career as fireman EMT. I moved back to poetry in 2015. Since moving back in 2015, I worked as a fireman EMT at Balch Springs Fire Department. On my days off from the fire department, I work on ranches and poetry to continue the agricultural life in this community. Preserving agriculture and our rural way of life is priority number one. What we do in this term will be laying the foundation for future generations of poetry. I plan to build a solid foundation for our community. Poetry has proven to be a wonderful place to plant roots for my ancestors. I hope to continue that rural life for future generations of my family and others that choose to call poetry home. And that's his bio. Hope y'all will support our family, and my husband's run for town council.
Good job, Becky. All right, next up is going to be, and these are all for your council members, okay? And if you don't know, there will be 5 that you'll get to check off for on your ballot, okay? There'll be, how many do you have in the council? 12? 11, okay. And then there'll be, so you'll get to pick 5 out of the 11 when you vote, okay? All right, so this is going to be number 2, Brian Benson.
Let's see how my fight with this thing goes. Good evening, my name is Brian Benson, and I'm running for Poetry Town Council. I must say I've never really wanted to run for office. Truthfully, I still don't want to run for office. But I believe that I have skills that would be helpful to the town. And if you've read my Nextdoor post, you will understand that I encourage people to become involved in politics and make sure that we're properly represented. So I'm following my own advice. My wife and I joined the poetry community about 6 years ago. And my goal here is to help maintain Poetry as we found it. As a member of the town council, that'll be my focus. As a general rule, I believe that a property owner should be sovereign on his or her own land. And as long as what happens on that land is not unduly negatively impactful on others. It's the government's place to step in only to define what undue means, not to impose additional restrictions. Secondly, I believe that the community should come together as a community in order to meet community goals. This does not necessarily need to be coordinated by government. If you and your neighbors want to make something happen, and it's legal, make it happen. Do it. Don't wait for the government. This leads to what I feel is the most important aspect of governance, and that's personal responsibility. We must be responsible for ourselves and govern ourselves before we can expect someone else to be responsible for us or govern us. We have to be responsible for our own actions and our own beliefs before we can tell the government to represent us. To do it any other way sets us up to be ruled rather than governed. In the same way, we must understand that government does not create. Government does not earn. In order to spend money and execute projects, it must take money from someone. The more we ask of government, the more it will take, and the more liberty we will lose to it. Before you ask government to step in, I encourage you to think about as much about what you will be giving up to the government as you will about what you will be gaining. Finally, I want to give you a reminder. Regardless of who's elected, there are two sides to the council table. Those you elect will sit behind it, but the real guidance, the real power must come from the citizens. You guys will be sitting in front of it. I may be sitting in front of it. Either way, we need your voice to be heard. Without your continued direct input, government can turn not to be your protector, but to be your tormentor. And your participation is required to keep it tame. I hope you'll take the opportunity to act beyond your sovereignty, to join with your community. Require little from the government by acting first as a community. Exercise your personal responsibility so that your representation is for the betterment of poetry, and then ask the government to do little so that we, the people, retain our power. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving right along, draw number 3, Tim Smith, you're up.
Well, I'd like to welcome everybody here first thing this evening, and my name is Tim Smith. I don't know why I get emotional to talk. My wife and I moved into Terrell probably back in 95, 96 with our 3 children. And we started going to Poetry Baptist and met a lot of good friends there, realized that, hey, this is where we want to set some roots. And it was a fortunate opportunity that some friends of ours at church, they were having to get relocated because her husband was in the Navy. And so we had the opportunity to buy their place. And we actually got it. So we moved here in Poetry in 99. So we've been here 20 plus years. My youngest daughter was one of the first graduating classes of Poetry Community Christian School. And that was, like Tara had said, it was an adventure and full-time job for not only the volunteering parents and everybody else in the community to get that school to flourish for what it is today. It started out in a little bitty old, wore out little bitty old room, you know, to where it is now. Due to health issues, then my wife was at work in American National Bank. She no longer worked there. She had the opportunity to work for Shane Schindler at Firehouse Moving and Delivery. He decided he was getting ready to semi-retire, so she's at there and decided to, excuse me, I'm sorry, purchase the business. And so she ran it. At that time, I was working for corporate America, Lone Star Gas, which got bought up by Encore, DXU, 3 different names and stuff like that. Well, unfortunately, due to her illness, she had lost her vision. And So I started piddling around doing the hay baling and stuff like that. And I'd made a decision, I gotta get closer to home, so I became full-time hay baling, and I've been doing that 15 plus years here in this community. So this community means a lot to us. This is where I've made my living, that's where she's made her living. And then we've expanded and we purchased Poetry Postal and self-storage. And so on top, we're running 3 businesses, you know, and this is, like I said, this has been our home. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the way I look at this is when we first moved here, you know, I could tell you all 4 cars that went down 986. Unfortunately, it's not that way no more. You know, if somebody went past the cemetery in a vehicle, they was up to no good, you know. And so, my goal is, I want to keep this the way it was and the way it needs to be. Unfortunately, I know there's going to be growth. You know, it's coming all around us, but that don't mean we have to decide what the powers to be is trying to push it on to us. We don't have to take developments in. We don't have to bring other stuff in. We need to stay rural as long as we can stay rural with as little or no government, period. That's the way it needs to be. You know, just stay country. That's what it's all about.
Amen.
So that's, and I hope to get your vote and see if I can help things out and keep it that way. Appreciate it.
All right, drawing the floor, Stephen Welsh.
Hello, everybody. I'm Stephen Welsh, and I appreciate, what a good crowd. I thought when this all started, I thought, oh, it's poetry. There aren't going to be that many people interested in politics. Dang, that's a lot of people. So, well, I'm one of them, so hopefully we can decide what's best for poetry. And just here to tell you a little about myself. I was born in Fort Worth. I was raised in Mesquite. We moved out to poetry 7 years ago with my mother-in-law, and we live over here in the corner right next to Dr. Merrill, Dr. Britton. So we love watching her with her horses. It's just we love living out here, and we have really enjoyed our time. So we go to church up in a little church in Fay. We visited around, and that's where God placed us. And He hasn't given us permission to leave yet, but we got a lot of close ties with people, and we have a Bible study group on our house every Thursday night. So you guys are sure welcome. Oh, my wife is looking at me. So, just call ahead of time. So I'm an assistant principal at a high school in Garland, big high school in Garland, Lakeview. And I don't know if any of you know what Lakeview's like. It's pretty hard school, but there's a lot of good things going on there. The kids are great. So I figured that some of the things I do there, I can do here. I don't like to belabor meetings. I like to move things along quickly and let's make a decision and then next. So I'm very much the administrator. I want to hear the details and then let's take a vote and move on. So I like to get the facts, I like to learn, and so I think I can use that here. I'm also a 2-time cancer survivor. I got 2 treatments left, y'all. So I'm really excited about that, thank you. Yeah. I have some of my hobbies. We have some, Dr. Britton is kind of excited about this because we have beehives, now, so we're learning to keep bees. We figured goats were not for us, and chickens. There are so many red foxes in this area. You can't keep chickens. So we gave up on the chickens, but bees are working out fine. So I'm pretty excited about that. So if you guys, I'd be glad to contribute any way I can and be glad to help out and keeping poetry the way it is. So we really like it here. Very grateful for the opportunity. Thanks.
All right, draw number 5 is Mr. Terry Fowler.
Hello, everybody. I probably know my biography better than anybody else, but I'm going to read it because I don't want to miss any key points. I'm glad everybody showed up. I think the opportunity for us to set this inaugural council is going to be just the start, the foundation of this city. So I do want everybody to be heard, and I think we should ask the questions, the tough questions, and quiet. Okay. So, hello Poetry, I'm Terry Fowler. I've lived here for 14 years. I moved here when I married my wife, Amy Bennett Fowler. My wife is the 8th generation resident of Poetry. We have one daughter who attends Poetry Christian School. She is now the 9th generation. Our family raises cattle and quarter horses and values the agriculture and ranch way of life. We value our neighbors and the diversity in this city, our soon-to-be count. I guess we are a city now, so. Town. Synonyms. There's several reasons I chose to run for town Poetry council person. One is the commitment and love for our community. I grew up south of Terrell, and man, there's just nothing better than Poetry. I mean, the beauty, I don't think I have to explain that to anybody that's here tonight. When the incorporation of Poetry was proposed, I, like more than 70% of you that voted for it, was interested in keeping it the way it is. Like some of the other candidates have mentioned, yeah, I want to keep it like it is, but it's more of a fear of what's Terrell going to do, what's Roy City going to do. I don't want to keep my grass at 3 inches. I want to keep it like we have it now. So, you know, we need to protect the land, the history, the people, our mindset, the sense of community that we have. Becoming a town protects us residents from assessed taxes and some of those ordinances that we don't want in this town. The other reason that I think that I can offer my skills and experience that will benefit the city is I've been a firefighter my entire life. A week from now will be 20 years, and in my 20 years I've promoted through every rank: firefighter, driver, lieutenant, captain. I currently serve as a battalion chief over C shift. So my duties as a battalion chief, we do a lot of budgeting, scheduling, talking to vendors, dealing with city council members. So I'm pretty in depth in the day-to-day operations of government. Not that I want this thing to look like anything like University Park. Great place, beautiful, it's not us. But I do understand the inner workings of it. During my 20 years, I served 2 terms as a Telford Pension Board member, where we managed over $10 million in pensions. We dealt with state legislators. Is that everything? Sorry, I'm long-winded tonight. My goal here is to keep Poetry and keep it great.
Thank you, Terry. Line number 6 is Tom Anderson.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm Tom Anderson. I'm a candidate for town council. I guess there's 3 things we really wanted to address. One is, why we like poetry. And the second one is a little bit about myself. And the third is about where do we go from here? Because once there's a council elected, there will be things that have to happen. Well, first of all, I like poetry. I was raised in a small town. I've always lived in small towns. Been in poetry almost 20 years. And so I like the small town. I like the environment. I like the culture. So I said I was raised in a small town, but I went to A&M, got a degree in chemical engineering, started working in oil companies, mostly refining. Worked in Texas, Ohio, and then ended up in Saudi Arabia, worked 7 years there. When I came back, we moved to Sunnyvale, and I was working for a consulting company in Dallas. And in Sunnyvale, it was in the 1980s, before it started growing, and I saw all the problems I think we're going to face here in the city council meetings. I was never on the council, but I went to the meetings and heard all the confrontations and problems, and it's a lot. Anyway, after we left Sunnyvale in 2002, we'd been there from the 80s to 2002, primarily to raise horses, because we had horses and we needed land. So we moved to poetry in 2002. We have Arabian horses. My wife and daughter were showing, and we had a stallion we were breeding. And so we liked the open environment and being able to do what we did. In 2002 to 2011, we're here. Well, my wife died in 2012. I'd retired at the end of 2011 to help take care of her. Well, and I'm still retired, by the way, which means I have time. After she died of cancer, then a year later, I married Debbie Harper, who's sitting over here. Her husband died 2 weeks after my wife, and so we ended up they were friends, she and my wife were friends, we ended up getting married. So we've been here for a long time. What I see is going to happen with poetry is we have to have bylaws, have to have organization, and have to have some financial stability. How we do it is a lot of questions, but those are the three things we have to have. And with my experience, and by the way, when I was in consulting, and almost all my career I was in refining and economics, project planning, litigation, so pretty well worked the full scope of things. But what's coming up for poetry is there's going to be a lot of legal issues to address, a lot of organizational issues will have to be settled. There's going to be financial issues that have to be addressed, and we don't have answers here today, but we know what we have to address, and thinking, well, maybe my experience that I've had will be of help in that. So I'm happy to help in any way I can, and appreciate everybody coming out to vote, and well, good luck with what happens.
Thank you. All right, candidate number 7 is not here, so hopefully we'll get some answers to post online from candidate 7. So this is going to be number 8, Robert Herman.
Hello. My name's Robert Herman, and I just want to thank you all for coming out this evening and listening to all of us. I'm running for town council, and I've had the privilege of living here in Poetry for about 12 years. We moved here from Arizona in 2008. I'm sorry, 2009. I keep mixing those up. And I live right off of 1565 with my wife Shannon of 30 years and our 4 daughters who attended Poetry Community Christian School, and we now attend Poetry Baptist Church. Well, we have been, we still attend there. So we wanted to live in the country, and we just fell in love with this area out here, and we don't want to see it changing. We like it the way it is, and that's what I'm reaching for, is to keep it simple, address, just keep it simple and make it easy for us. I know that we'll have needs, has been addressed by others here, that we'll have to look at and address as a town council. A little about myself is I served in the U.S. Navy. I've owned and managed construction companies and an oil transport business. I currently work for a construction company and development company, and we are based out of the area, and we travel around and do pad sites and ponds and different kinds of small developments. What drew my wife and I to poetry was the country feel, the lifestyle, and the relationships with our neighbors. And, I love our neighbors, and I love people, and I love to serve. I'm the guy that would stop, help you change your tire, fix your fence, or put your cow back in the pasture, even if I didn't know you. I've done it many times. I've been blessed with the opportunity to serve at the school, at my church, serve my community in lots of ways here. And I've also been blessed that my jobs have afforded me the opportunity to have the time to be involved in our community. So I'm short and simple. That's the way I like it, and I just ask for your vote. Thank you.
All right, number 9 is Mike Jaffe.
Good evening, everybody, and again, thank you for coming out. It's pretty impressive, the slate of people we have here, but let me get on to things. I'm going to read my bio because I can talk all night, and I don't want to be that cruel. Good evening, my name is Mike Jaffe. I'm a candidate for councilperson in the upcoming Town of Poetry election. I've called poetry home for 22 years now. My wife Sue and I raised our 2 now-grown sons here. Both of them attended Poetry Christian School, a school that, as others have said, we helped build and grow. Sue and I attend and serve Poetry Baptist Church. I'm a graduate of Texas A&M. Before I retired, I was a telecom executive and commuted to somewhere in Dallas on a daily basis. For many years, my commute also included travel around the world. It didn't matter whether I was sitting in my office in Dallas or in London or anywhere else in the world. I was always thinking about getting back to poetry. It's been my happy place for a long time now, and in fact, I tell people that I know it's not going to be a good day when I have to cross the lake, Ray Hubbard, to run an errand in Dallas. I like being in poetry. My greatest qualification for the role of council person is, like other of my companions up here, I love poetry. It's my home. It's where my friends live. It's my community. And if elected, I commit to doing my absolute best to protect the things about poetry that we all value. In a perfect world, we wouldn't be here talking about an election. We would simply be getting on with our lives here in poetry. But the world moves on around us, whether we like it or not, and the days of poetry continuing to be its own community were numbered. And so the arguments for and against were made, and then we voted. And a majority of those voting chose incorporation, which brings us to tonight and the need for an election for council and mayor. I believe this is where the challenges and opportunities begin. Let me pause here briefly to acknowledge the citizens of poetry who weren't in favor of incorporation. We are in this together, and your voices are important too. If elected, I will do my best to represent everyone who lives in the town of Poetry. Before the incorporation vote, while discussing the topic with my friends and neighbors, I was reminded in a very real way that we have a wide range of ideas and beliefs when it comes to how we might protect and preserve poetry. Everybody's definition is different. We have an interesting journey in front of us. I believe the two ends of the spectrum are landowner rights and community interest, whatever that means. They're not mutually exclusive, but they do conflict in a number of ways. What seems like an obvious thing for the town to regulate or manage, in your opinion, may trample all over your neighbor's belief system. We each moved here for different reasons. We like our independence. Most of us don't want someone else telling us that what we can and can't do with our piece of poetry. Our mayor and council will have their work cut out for them and will have to walk this path carefully and thoughtfully. Like many of my running mates, I want to do what is best to protect and preserve poetry. I don't have a detailed list of things I want to accomplish in this role, but if I had to give you a guiding principle to capture my approach, it would be to keep poetry poetry. I don't want it to be Fate or Heath or Royce City or like any other town for that matter. I want it to be poetry. We have a few things we're required to do by state law. I don't know what they are, but I will, and everything after that is completely in our hands. I believe I have the passion, experience, and wisdom to succeed as your council person, and I thank you in advance for your vote and support.
Thank you so much. Number 10, is it Simeon, is that how, did I say it right? Simeon White, number 10.
Hi there, everybody. And it is Simeon White. I'm Simeon White, but you know, if you call me Simeon or Simon or Salmon or any pronunciation, incorrect or correct, I've been called it all before. So no worry about that. I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, and a small business owner. You might know me from when I was canvassing for poetry. I worked with Miss Tara and Mr. Brian on that specifically. Two candidates, which I can't support more, by the way. Please also give them your vote if you can, because they're just great, wonderful people that have been involved from the very beginning, because they just love the town so much. You may also know me from working on the town hall. I recognize lots of faces in here, also family members. And at the very least, we probably swapped a howdy at the Tack and Ag, or you know, maybe you'll drive past the cemetery on the way here, Dry Creek, where my family put in some volunteer hours to clean up the place and make it a little nicer for the whole community. Which is really the point, is we are a community. And my love for this community, as I've had time to be with everybody and work with the other candidates here even, because after all, we're working as a group and clean up the place, it's really put a soft place in my heart for poetry. I've been here 13 years, and I've never seen such community as we have now. And I think that's what we're going to see in the future, is all of us coming together. Now, I work at our family-owned and operated business, Royalty Soaps, where we proudly provide quite a few jobs to some of the residents of Poetry. And it's not very big, it's just a small mom and pop's place, but we saw it grow and increase year over year. And originally we were operating in Terrell, and I know some of y'all know the story, but it was all going well until one day Terrell confronted our business with false zoning allocations, saying that we had gone above the limit for residential, which wasn't true at all. We checked and went through it. Really, we found out later that Terrell was just after a little more property tax, which is all too common. That's what we want to avoid here. And they gave us a 30-day notice to completely shut down and move the business. By the good grace of God, we were able to move right here to Poetry, Texas. We did so without much problem at all for ourselves or our employees. But that experience really set really firm in me. The determination to defend our freedom and our property rights. Because after all, this is our property. Poetry is to the peoples. It's not the town of Poetry's property. It's yours and ours. It's not for the city, the town. Thankfully, we can call it. We don't have to call it the city like Terrell does. It's not for the town to determine what we can do with our own property unless it interferes with the rights of our fellow people. And given the chance, and with my fellow councilmen, I hope to keep the taxes low, limit the power and expansion of development that seems to be cropping up all over the place in Poetry, and help maintain our roads, which we can thank our amazing road crew for already. It's been amazing. I also plan to get the county involved again, because they sure owe us a little. We pay them a good bit in tax already, so they can chip in a little for the roads like they used to. Also, I believe in keeping Poetry not only a small town, but with a small volunteer-based government and even smaller taxes like I mentioned. If I should be elected, I will uphold and protect faith, family, and farmland in general for my neighbors, my friends, and we the people of Poetry, Texas. Just a little more about me. I've lived in Poetry 13 years, like I said. I'm an Eagle Scout in the business. I'm the operations manager, so I kind of specialize as we've grown the business in building something from nothing. And that's what we're studying for with Poetry. We're starting with not much. Just a bunch of amazing people, some ideas, a lot of know-how. And I know, and I've seen it grow from a little nothing, and for our business into a thriving business. And I think we can make a thriving community in town from this.
Time.
Okay, well then, one last thing. I'm sorry. I always like to end these speeches with a verse if I can, and that's 1 Thessalonians 4:11. And it says, "And make it your ambition to lead a quiet life and attend your own business and work with your hands just as we commanded you." And I think that's the heart and soul of Poetry. So take care, neighbors. God bless and have a good night.
Bo, did you get your own number? All right, this is our number 7 candidate, so we're gonna come back and catch you real quick, okay?
Okay.
All right, this is Bo Scott. What's it say on the ballot? It says your real name.
Yeah, Ryan.
It says Ryan Scott, okay?
Yeah, so my name is Ryan Scott, and everybody pretty much calls me Bo. I literally grew up half a mile down 1565 right here. Been here 29 years, and I'm 4th generation in the Poetry area. Many people might know him. Tim, you got me going now. There you go. Many of y'all might know my grandparents are Margaret and G.B. Royce. My family's got a long history in this area, and like all things, change is inevitable. You can't avoid it. I was just thinking today, like I remember riding my bike up and down 1565 when I was a kid. You know? And like Tim said, wouldn't even dream about that nowadays. I'm gonna have to read and do a little freestyle in here, so y'all bear with me. So, my wife and I currently still live in this area. We own and operate a small pasture-to-table cattle operation. And my parents still live right down the road. My mom and dad were police officers growing up, and from them, I really got a sense of service through their example and parenting. I came to learn and maintain an attitude of service to others. Unlike my parents, though, I chose to pursue a different and arguably better career of becoming a firefighter. Since 2014, I have worked as a fireman for the city of Arlington, and through this career, I've gained experience and skill in the management and operations of local government. And my hope is that the town of Poetry, that our new local government is a lot better than the city of Arlington's, because, yeah. So I've seen the bad side of things. I want to help make a good positive impact here. Also, growing up in this area, I was fortunate enough to work for a lot of what I consider good ranchers, great ranchers, guys that I look up to. Amy's dad, Lewis, he's Uncle Dale to me. Everybody else knows him as Rooster. And Les McFarland and a few others. On my off days, I still kind of day work cowboying around here, and I also have a part-time job working as kind of a foreman for a construction company, local construction company. Through these experiences, I was taught the value of a strong work ethic, integrity, and good character. I daily continue to pursue improvement in these areas of my life. It is my belief that individuals in the position of an elected office should be forthcoming, transparent, intentional, and listening to the voices of those who elected them, fair in their dealings with others, and rooted in an attitude of humility and service. As with all things in life, change is inevitable. Throughout my lifetime, I have personally witnessed poetry go from primarily farming and ranching community to what some would now call a rural-urban interface. If you'd asked me 10 years ago if I had thought poetry would be its own town, I would have told you ain't no way. But here we are. And in my opinion, whether you were for or whether you were against incorporation, it doesn't matter anymore. We're here now. And we need to come together as a community to make and keep poetry the best town it can be. If elected, I'll serve poetry with the same attitude of service, justice, integrity, and humility I strive to show my family, my community, the citizens of Arlington, and all others I come in contact with. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much. All right, now, number 11, Clyde, right, Cerna? Okay, Clyde Cerna, number 11. He's our last one, then we'll go to our questions.
Say the best for last. My name's Clyde Cerna. We've been in poetry for 16 years. I'm a small rancher, and we actually live right next door. Been married to my wife for 40 years. I've got 2 sons. One's 30, the other's 33. Both of them are in the military. I'm retired Navy chief with construction battalion. I did 22 years, did 3 combat tours. And I currently am the director of facilities and maintenance. I've been doing maintenance for close to 40 years. So I've got lots of leadership. When I was a Navy chief with the Seabees, and I had over 250 CB engineers, and we did all type of construction projects. So I think my leadership of 30-something years in industrial maintenance will help us with some of the projects and things that we're trying to do, and also keep some of the county officials or county government in check on some of the things that we're trying to do here at Poetry. Also would like to keep poetry what it is as country. We came from Garland, and when I first moved to Garland, 16,000 people, and we left close to a quarter of a million there. So poetry is my home, and it's where I plan on retiring. I've done numerous volunteer work with the military and trying to do things for the military. Board of directors for United We Stand. I was also a volunteer firefighter for Union Valley out here, so do a lot of volunteer work and whatever I can to give back to the community. I like to volunteer, and and be your city councilman. Vote for me. Appreciate your vote. Thanks.
All right, so we're gonna go to the questions time, and to kind of make it where we're not kind of falling asleep, we're going to kind of play musical chairs. Just kidding. What you're gonna do is we're gonna have you come up. I'm gonna ask one question, give your answer. It needs to be limited to about a minute or so for that question, and then the next person kind of come up. We'll just rotate through that question. I'll ask it again for you if you need me to. If you know your response and just want to wail it out there from the microphone after the next one, that's fine too, okay? Like I said, these questions were pulled from questions that you guys left in the basket at the last meeting and questions that were submitted online, and we compiled them, put them together. They're just so you can get to know a little bit more about the candidates. Feel free to communicate with them individually. Once their bios are up, you'll be able to communicate with them through the website as well. So our first, let's do Chad and Tara, and we're gonna do one at a time, but you can both come up to the microphone if you'd like, and then we'll just be swapping back and forth. So we're gonna start with Chad, and our first question of the night said, you want the other microphone or you want the pedestal? That way you can kind of, we'll all play around. So we'll let Chad answer and then we'll let Tara answer, okay? All right, so the first question is, if elected, and the mayor's position is a 4-year term, so if elected, you'll serve a 4-year term. What changes to poetry do you envision over the next 4 years?
As few as possible is my real answer. So I'm gonna keep that platform kind of reoccurring. I know a lot of this is about change, becoming a town, and I still want to fall back on, I believe that we became a town to protect our own interests and not become an actual city. So the answer is as little as possible. In fact, I want to say 0 minus roads, maybe some decent internet, you know, maybe something simple like that. But the answer, without taking any more time, is literally as little as possible to change what we already have here. So I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I can second that. As few as possible. We want as few regulations as possible. I don't like them either. Physically, I'd like to see some welcome signs at our thoroughfare entryways. I think a welcoming sign that says our population and welcome to poetry would be kind of nice. We'd like to finish the Campground Church project. It's an historical church for the area, and it's a beautiful history, and I'd like to continue to preserve that. We would like to see some betterment on our roads. I think that's probably one of our number one challenges. My husband has been already digging in on that. We've literally been working on the roads teams. We've covered 3.5 miles this past week. So we're so thankful for many of you who donated to that cause. We were able to get the equipment for free for a day, so the roller and the hot truck, so we're very thankful for that. So we've already been doing things for this to help your town, our town. And but let me be clear, we have some very formidable outside forces that want a piece of poetry. They want to further take advantage of our area, our people, our resources, our way of life for their own gain. So we have to take every means possible legally to make sure that we can protect our way of life. We must. So I plan on doing everything behind the scenes, legally possible, to protect our area. So I appreciate your vote.
Thank you so much. All right, it's going to be Matthew and Brian. So Haley and Brian, you're up. Same question.
Sorry, you can't compete with baby.
All right, same question. If elected, you guys will serve, it's a 2-year term. There's some sway in there to possibly 3. That'll be up to how you guys kind of set some of that up and interpret the new law with the attorneys. So what changes to poetry do you envision over the next 2 to 3 years-ish? Okay, go ahead.
Well, okay. So this is obviously my husband's response. From my understanding, the whole reason to incorporate poetry was to not have a big town come in and try to change the small town that we love. Other than setting up utilities and setting up the town foundation, I don't see any changes that need to come to poetry. Of course, there are some things that are gonna have to come in along the way, like the utilities and things like that, since we're incorporated, but otherwise, why change anything? He wants to keep things the way that they are.
Thank you so much, sir. Go ahead.
As Haley said, you can't compete with a baby, so I'm not gonna try. I think this is gonna be a recurring theme as far as what changes do we wanna see, as little as possible. There are some things that, we're going to have to do by law, but as little as we can do to maintain our protective shell so that we're protected from outside influences, I think that's what we need to do. Some of that, unfortunately, will be needing to raise some funds so that we can have a legal defense against developers and that kind of thing who might want to come in. So, that's unfortunately a part of government, is that it does need money to run. So we'll try to keep that as low as possible and use it as strategically as possible. But I don't want to leave you with the impression that everything's going to be butterflies and rainbows all the time. We're just going to have to make sure that we have the equipment that we need to fight the fights that we're going to have to keep it as rural as we possibly can. Thanks.
All right, next up is going to be Tim and Stephen. Tim Smith and Stephen Welsh, you're up. So the question in front of you is, what changes to poetry do you envision over the next 2 to 3-ish years? So Tim and then Stephen, go ahead.
I'm just gonna reiterate what everybody else is saying. I don't want any change, but unfortunately, no change is going to come. The only things I might want to change is everybody just to slow down and smell the country air. Don't pull a Bud Dennis and go 40 mile an hour in a 55, but slow down. Just enjoy our town. We don't need any more changes. We don't need any restrictions. Just be mindful of our neighbors, and just go from there. That's it. Get our government in place this first year, because it's going to take a little bit to get that in place. Figure out where our monies are coming from. Work on our roads. Yes, that's going to be a nightmare regardless. They've been a nightmare since we've been here since day one. Me, I just need to go back to rock. It's easier to mess with than this asphalt. Get that in place. Just keep things at a minimum. We got Union Valley that's been a township for a while now. They don't have nothing going on hardly. They do have some development coming in, but I might have showed my soft side a minute ago. When it comes to somebody trying to entreat and peach and get in our area, I'm gonna fight tooth and nail to keep development out of our area, because I want to keep it this way. We're getting pushed out as it is, so let's keep it as long as we can.
Yeah, so amen, amen on that one, so that's good. Thank you. I think the only other thing I would add is, I would like to see, more community involvement, at Christmas time when we do tree lightings, I kind of want to do tree lighting here with, and have my, the kids come out and everything here, so rather than go across town and different places. So I'd just like to see more events, that unify our neighbors and bring everybody together around different parts of the year or holidays. So I think, but everything else has been, ditto.
All right, thank you. All right, Terry and Tom. Terry Fowler and Tom Anderson, you're up. Question is, what changes to poetry do you envision over the next 2, 3-ish years?
Go ahead. So you're probably going to hear a continuing theme up here. So the other direction I say is what can we do to do that? So this city's going to be in the infancy stage. We need to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. But part of that success is going to be listening to everybody. Everybody doesn't want to be on this side, and I'm not just a fan of being on this side, but I want to make sure that we move forward in the direction that the community wants. So listening to everybody, I've heard rumors already. Oh, we're going to tax. We got to do this. We got to do that. First things first. Let's look and see what our needs are. We have to start discussing what are our needs. Where can we get revenue besides taxation? Utility easements. Utility companies have to pay for those easements. There's going to be other revenues and avenues that we can go down. So the resounding theme is going to be keep poetry. So we need to develop that, but we need to hear from everybody else. Take actionable items and make action points out of them. Take items that are big, thought out, and just sunset some stuff and say, that's not for us. And then prioritize everything else. But I think first and foremost, we need to set our boundaries in our government and let the people speak.
Yeah, actually, to spin off of that, I agree that the first step for poetry is to get an organization, get bylaws, financial stability, get those, that will be different over the next 2 to 4 years. The environment, I don't see much is gonna change, but what we do in setting up the form of government we're gonna have will affect poetry for the next 50 years. That, to me, is what's important, not the next 2. I don't think much can happen in 2 years, but a lot can happen in 50 years. And so we all want to keep a certain environment here, so the form of government that we develop over the next 2 to 4 years is going to set the course for the next 50 years.
All right, we are on Bo and Robert, 7 and 8. Bo and Robert. What changes to poetry do you envision over the next couple of years?
Hate before beauty.
Well, thanks, Bob. I think, I kind of agree with everybody here. It's kind of been my theme and how I felt about it. I think the important thing is, like was just said up here, we have to set a vision and mission for the future of poetry. And I think without that, we can lose what we want. Keep it simple, keep it poetry. Just make sure I didn't miss anything here. I also think that keeping the community involved in small government is key to poetry's success. You're up, Bo.
Yeah, just to echo everything that everybody's been saying so far. I mean, if it's up to me, poetry would never change from the way it was when I was a kid. But change happens, and it's here, and it's going to change in the future some. And so we have to learn to adapt to change. It's inevitable. Who knows what change is going to look like 50 years from now, but that's my goal. It's like what we do today is going to start laying the foundation, the groundwork. The foundation is the most important part of any structure. And if we lay a good foundation for the town right now, then, in 50 years, it'll still be hopefully relatively the same that it is now. And there'll still be future generations that get to enjoy the place that we are currently enjoying. I agree. To me, handling change well, it's involvement from the community. It's intentional listening from the city council, whoever they may be. And it's leading through humility and integrity and positive contribution from all parties. So.
All right, thank you so much. Age of beauty there, right? Okay, number 9 and 10, Mike Jaffe and Simeon White, you're up. What changes do you envision?
Well, of course, it's really encouraging to me that everybody's kind of echoing the same thing. We want minimal changes, minimal. And if we're going to make a change, mostly volunteer-based. We're looking at better roads, which is the most important thing. I think getting the county involved as soon as possible is imperative, because every second that we let the county not be involved with paying for that is another tax bit that comes out of our pocket. I think stronger communications is another thing we're going to see. I think that that's something we've all discussed and been working on. There's a lot of different options. I think we should use all of them, start collecting emails. The water bill's been great. Next door poetry. We want to see really strong communications for community involvement and a tighter knit community. I also hope to see the town hall finished and looking beautiful. It's already done a fantastic job, and thank you to everybody that's been doing that. We've seen some amazing donations too. Some people that have just donated their entire stimulus check to that. And just gifts like that to the community. And seeing that get built is something I hope will get done soon, so that we all have a place to meet. Maybe it'll even need to be a bit bigger, because we had some great turnout tonight. So we can all get involved. And again, that's part of communications. And then I think the biggest thing that I'll emphasize that I stand on is protecting our private property rights. Development companies will come in, as they do. They'll urbanize certain areas, and because of that, all of our farmers are going to have less and less say, because those urban areas and the areas that are more developed are going to have more population. And I think that's the greatest worry for me, because that's a lot of votes for stuff. And next time an election rolls around, if we're not careful, there might be a lot of people who value more densely populated areas instead of this farmland. So keeping it like it is and making sure that in the future it also remains.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so, I think a lot of good things have been said. I'll repeat a few of them here. I think, we have to get our city up and running. We've got some legal requirements that we have to fulfill as part of setting up a town. And those really aren't going to deliver any benefits to the citizens, other than you'll know that you have a properly functioning council. Clearly, we need to plan an effort to improve our roads. We need to, I'm kind of an engineer at heart, so I think we need to inventory the roads and prioritize the roads and sort of figure out what monies we have. As others have said, we've got franchise fees and things that we're eligible to collect. And we need to figure out what of those monies we have without doing the first bit of taxation and see how far we can stretch it. As Robert said, I think, borrowing from my business experience, we need a unified vision for poetry, and we need to follow that up with a mission statement. Those are kind of businessy terms, but basically you just need to know where you're going and how you're going to get there. And I think, I have a vision, but it may not be your vision, right? And my vision doesn't have priority over yours. So we need to sort of blend our visions together in a way that we come up with something that we all are happy with. And I think too, and again, getting a little businessy here, we need to do something along the lines of, in business, we call it a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And just sort of figure out where we need to focus our efforts. We don't want to be prioritizing hypothetical, non-essential efforts over real and existing issues, right? I mean, there's a lot of imaginary monsters out there, but we need to kind of deal with the real ones. We need to look out over the horizon a little ways, but we don't need to solve problems that aren't going to happen for 1,000 years, because we have other things that we need to be working on. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Clyde, you're up. And then we'll go to our next question. What changes do you envision over the next couple of years?
Like everybody else, we're going to try to keep poetry the same. One of the things that I see that will happen is that we now, as a township, have a voice with our county commissioner versus individuals calling the commissioner and trying to get him to come out here and repair some of the roads. But so that part I know is going to happen. Regardless who gets elected, our commissioners and our mayor will we'll get real close and tight with our county commissioner and get whatever money's coming to our township. Other than that, maybe a speed limit sign up and down 1565, keep some of these trucks from running people over. But anyways, that's about all that I've got to say about that.
Thank you so much. All right, this time we're going to start with number 3 in the council, and then we're going to come back and do the mayor ones at the end, okay? Kind of switch it up. So number 3 and 4, it's going to be Tim and Stephen. And the question that we're going to ask you guys is, if you're not elected, what would you do to try to help and work on ideas or issues that are important to you? Like what kind of a community service? If you're not elected, how can you still help us out? So, you're up, Tim.
Well, not elected, I mean, just like I've done the last multiple 20 years I've lived here. Somebody spoke before. If you see somebody that's got a tire down, you go fix that tire for them. You got a cow out, you got a fence done, you got something like that. That's just being country. I'm just going to keep living the country life that I know how to live. And so that's what I plan on keep doing for this community. It's that simple.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, it does. I mean, if not elected, we're going to continue to participate, and I call it good citizenship. I try to teach that to the kids at school, and you have to be involved and be informed and be active, be aware of what's going on around you, and communicate. I think communication is a two-way street, so it's the obligation we all have to share and get to know what's going on around us and speak into it and vote, contribute, whatever we can do, use our talents and gifts to serve others, and that's what we need to do. So if I'm not in this group at the end of all this, that's fine. We will continue to do what we're going to continue to be good citizens and good neighbors. So hopefully you will too.
Thank you so much. All right, number 5 and 6, Terry and Tom. Terry Fowler and Tom Anderson. If you're not elected, what are you going to continue to do to help poetry?
So involvement, stay involved. Involvement, several definitions. Yeah, you can attend meetings, which I would plan to do. Would attend council meetings. You know, depending on which way this government's set up, if it be a committee, a road committee, or whatever the town sets up, you know, possibly serving on one of those committees for the betterment of the town itself. I know a lot of you. There's a lot of faces I don't know, but I think that the ones I do know understand that. I mean, I've helped almost everyone in this room at one point or another, just because that's what we are. So that's part of involvement, staying involved and getting to know everybody, but for sure being involved in the city government and let my voice be heard, just like I want to hear yours if I am elected.
Thank you so much.
Well, I guess coming back to there's going to be a lot of effort required over the next couple of years to get the city up and running. And the council and the mayor can't do everything. There will be committees that are going to be needed to study and work up solutions, or options rather, to be considered. And those are in all those areas of organizational, legal, and financial. And there's going to be a lot of contracts that have to be reviewed. So that all fits in with my experience, and I'd be happy to serve on any committee where I could be of help.
Thank you so much. All right, 7 and 8, Bo and Robert. If you're not elected, how are you going to continue to help out?
This time you go first.
Flip-flop this time.
Yeah, just staying involved, you know. I still attend meetings. Like I want my voice to be heard, just like y'all want your voice to be heard, you know. And so, staying involved, going to meetings, and I think as town moves forward, I think needs will become more clear. It's obvious, you know, we got some right now, but I think probably be some more in the future. And so, whether it's serving on a committee or, you know, just helping where you can. So.
Thank you so much.
If I'm not elected, I'll continue to serve my community as I have been. Help with the council, help with the mayor. Just like everybody else said, I like to keep it simple. Thank you.
We like simple, thank you. All right, where are we at? 9 and 10, Mike and Simeon. If you're not elected, how are you going to continue to help with the town?
All right, well, it's always my hope that everybody will be able to help the town as much as possible, even if not elected. Hopefully, the less the council has to do, the more the general populace is represented. But I plan to involve in the way I've been involving myself, which is going to the town meetings like this, which is so important because that's where we express our opinions and talk to our councilmen or candidates and mayor. I plan to continue to volunteer. There's a lot of great organizations that we've already done, from our beautification projects to our road maintenance, which is so important, and there's going to be historians and a lot more. I plan to get involved with that. It's going to be fantastic, especially history. Look forward to that. There are personal people that I'm still connected with from the county and from, of course, the people of poetry that I'll continue to talk to and try to resource for poetry. I know a lot of great people from Hunt County specifically, actually. And I also plan to continue to donate to projects that the town needs, because I think donations are a nice way. Even if we're doing a little tax, I think donations should be some of the primary sources of the town's money for little projects. So I'm going to continue to do that.
Thank you so much.
Well, as we've said in so many other words, poetry is and always will be my home. And my wife and I have 2 cemetery plots at the end of 986 to prove that. That's where we're going next. So between now and then, hopefully I'll have an opportunity to, you know, continue to serve my community, my neighbors, as others have said, in any way that I can. And the issues that I get involved in don't have to necessarily be important to me. I do lots of things that I really don't want to do, but it's because I see the need, and God has blessed me, and I want to bless others with the same kinds of things. So if poetry needs my help, I will certainly be there to give it.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so now we are to Clyde, and we're going to come back to Matthew, but you're going to read Matthew's response. So Clyde, you're up.
Okay, if not elected, I would like to continue to serve poetry by maybe joining a committee and just help them out with my expertise. I'm a licensed electrician, also a general contractor, so I'm sure there's always some things that need to be fixed.
Thank you so much. The entire town hall needs your services. I don't know if you've been up there yet, but anyways, okay. So Matthew's deal, and then Brian, right? Brian hasn't been.
So the beautiful baby had to go to sleep. So I have his written responses now. His written response to this is Matthew, is I will continue preserving and contributing to the agriculture of our community.
Hi, in regards to this question, what would I do? I would continue doing what I've been doing, and working on the road crew, part of the canvassing expedition to get the incorporation message out there, working on the town hall. These are all things that I have been doing. I'll continue to do that, but I also have a wide skill set as far as business. I have an MBA with a focus in organizational leadership, and some of the stuff that I've been using is communication skills, taking on the lead on communicating through Nextdoor, that type of thing. Also have project management skills, contract review, etc. So there's still a lot that I could do. And remember in my opening, I said there's two sides of the table, and I'll be on one side or the other. So that's all I have.
All right, that brings us to our mayoral candidates, right? Chad and Tara? I got everybody. Didn't leave anybody out.
Well, I would continue on doing as much as I possibly can. If I was allowed to, I would join the beautification team and continue on that path of making poetry even more beautiful. I might help my husband with the roads team, or fundraise actually with Friends of Poetry, because the town does have some needs. Maybe we need a new fire truck somewhere. Maybe we need an ambulance service. There might be other needs that come up that we could fundraise for, and I would happily lend myself to that. We've already started this fall and spring festivals. I usually lose about $1,000 doing that, but I'm happy to do that for the town. It's something that, I think one of the candidates was saying, we need some community involvement, and we try and do that with the hay rides and the train rides, and do that for the community, and I love people, and that's why we do that. So.
I guess one of the most unfortunate things about going last is everything's already said, but I could tell you that if I'm not elected, kind of piggybacking on about 8 people, is I continue to do whatever that neighborly thing is that I need to do. I think one of the most, standout parts about moving to poetry is I've never seen, and I mean that firsthand, and I've lived in HOAs and all in the city and suburbs, I've never seen such community help thy neighbor type mentality. And I think it's an amazing thing to watch. I want to be a part of it as much as I can be. I've started to be a part of it every time I'm asked. I don't think I've said no yet, and I don't plan on in the future. I think that what we need to do is, on the other side of that table, like we mentioned, is make sure that everybody understands the arguments at hand. I think when we're going to votes, when we're looking at policies, I think half the battle is really just getting the information out there and making sure that other people, even the 90% of poetry that's not in this room, get these arguments clear and understand both sides. I think there's a slippery slope when kind of, one side of an argument is represented and not everybody fully understands all sides. And some of the word tracks sound good, but I think there's a devil in the details, and I want that to be clear, and I want it to be written out, and I want everybody to understand it before we get to votes. So it's not more than a word track, it's actually what we're gonna do with our own community. Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna put the last 2 questions together so that you guys are only up here one more time, and it'll kind of make it go a little faster and everybody's getting hungry. So how would you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process? And then also, what what would you describe as your primary leadership quality? They kind of go together a little bit anyway. So your primary leadership quality and how are you going to involve the residents, okay? We're going to start with number 5, Terry and Tom, you're up.
You want to first? Go ahead. So I'm going to say one of the strongest leadership qualities that I have, and it's probably maybe not be stated by anybody else, is work ethics. I believe you got to be a strong worker to be a good leader. You've got to have been in the trenches to understand how to manage the trenches. I do own a small welding company. We've been in business and been successful for years. So I have the management side at work, managing firefighters and dealing with Telfra board members, and I have the management experience from managing my guys. But at the end of the day, it's, I work as hard as my guys do. I don't expect any more out of them than I do out of myself. That being said, as part of government, is I'm going to work for y'all. I'm going to listen. We're going to get together and have some ideas and have some open discussions, and then put that into play. So a strong work ethic is my biggest leadership ability.
I guess the first question about involving residents, I'm a believer in transparency, and that means having open meetings so people can be there and hear, see what's happening. I don't like things happening behind closed doors. I like things being out in the open. So one of the things I would strongly push is to have open meetings so that people can listen and hear, and make comments at the appropriate time. I guess my leadership is, according to my wife, is I get things done. And I guess that's kind of been my whole career, is I've gotten asked to do things because whenever there's an issue that there's a problem that needs to be taken care of, I believe in getting in and doing it and not waiting around. And my wife said that's what I am. So I guess that's probably one of my better characteristics. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Bo and Robert, you're up. How do you plan on involving the residents, and what would you describe as your primary leadership quality?
It's your turn now.
All right. You know, I like open meetings, thought about that a lot. I think that's a great way to involve the residents. The other thing I'd propose, because a lot of people don't go to these meetings, sometimes they happen when they can't come, is I'd propose an online survey link that we could post on Nextdoor. Something people can go to and share their interests and rate their priorities. We can use that. That's just one of many ways to involve the community. The other thing, I like the Nextdoor app. I mean, that thing was great through everything we did, incorporating poetry. It really kept me on track and all that. So, leadership, you know, I'm hardworking, I'm friendly, I'm a committed Christian. I love to serve. I think that I like to get out there and show and work with people in the trenches. One of the things that I like to do is I have a lot of mentors that I speak to and get advice from. I think that's a leadership quality. And the other thing that I do is I pray. I pray a lot.
It's my belief that elected officials are representatives of the people. My primary goal would be to represent you well. First and foremost, we cannot be a city council concerned with our own interests around a table of 5. We must listen to the voice of those who elected us. We must not think that we can adequately serve without first seeking the will of the rest of the residents and the citizens of the town of Poetry. Engagement of citizens through town meetings where all are encouraged to voice their concerns and desires transparently without repercussions or judgment will allow personal relationships to be built between those serving on the city council and our community. I will make myself available also for personal one-on-one conversations as well, and I understand that not everyone will feel comfortable speaking out in a meeting, but their voice is equally valuable, and I will listen. I truly believe that the best way to lead is through service. A posture of servitude allows me to be able to truly listen and seek to understand the different perspectives and empathize with multiple parties while keeping a focus on the good of the community.
All right, thank you guys. This is gonna be Mike and Simeon. How do you involve the residents and your leadership qualities?
Well, of course, there's nothing more important than making sure we're all communicated with for the decisions being made. Whoever's elected is just elected to represent. And our understanding of how the town of Poetry is going to shape is going to change. So nobody standing up here should say we're going to do this no matter what. It should be, as we learn as a community, we'll seek the counsel of the whole town in order to make these decisions. And I think the main thing to do that would be town meetings. Making sure that they're all open, making sure that it's recorded, maybe even an opportunity to ask questions or put in comments by people listening. Of course, I'll be talking to all the volunteers of Poetry as we go in our individual groups for road and beautification and all that. Communicating with people as in many ways as possible, because not everybody has, an email that we can access or is on Nextdoor or, shows up to the events. So communicating with all of our outlets is very, very important to make sure that everybody's represented. Of course, word of mouth is going to be our biggest thing, as always, and that's really what we're going to do as a group here, and I hope everybody who's here, who only is a small portion of the town, makes sure to do that. It's so important that we use that word of mouth, especially for a small town like we are. The leadership qualities, I'll keep it simple. I'm very honest, sometimes painfully honest, but I'm not going to hide anything. I've got nothing to hide, and honestly, there's nothing more important to me than moral integrity. So you couldn't convince me to lie even if you wanted me to. And that comes into play a lot for something like this. There's a lot of trust that goes into having neighbors like us. And I think that's what this town's built on. And since this is my last time standing up here tonight, I say good night and thank y'all all for being who y'all are, Poetry.
Okay, so I'll repeat some of what's been said. I think communication is important as we build trust and confidence in our new leadership, our council. Transparency in all that we do. I believe this includes the establishment of an official town website where citizens can go to see what's going on with our council. This would include copies of meeting minutes, meeting agendas, upcoming workshops, times and locations of town hall meetings. It would also include information on how to get in touch with us if you want to talk one-on-one or give input. When it comes to leadership, again, I spent tragically a large portion of my life in corporate America where I didn't belong. I actually belonged out here with Dale and my other cattle raising friends. I did learn a lot in leadership, and really I think my strength is my ability to motivate people to accomplish things they didn't think they could. As part of a bigger objective, and to me, it's all about making our mission their mission. And my most successful teams I did that with. As Simeon just said, I believe integrity, trust, and respect are important qualities of a successful leader. If you violate any one of these, your leadership is undermined. People don't follow people they don't look up to. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Clyde and then Matthew's response. So Clyde, you're up. And it's, how do you plan on involving the residents, and what are your leadership qualities?
I'd like to see about maybe doing some quarterly town hall meetings, maybe a state of the poetry, and just kind of involve them and let them know where we're going, and just kind of a question, bring it up as a forum, question and answer. Leadership qualities is mentorship is my trait that I look at. As a director of maintenance, there isn't anything that I don't expect any of my people to be able to do that I haven't done, or to be able to ask of them in any of the trades. So I'm pretty familiar with in the construction field, and I try to get them all motivated and train those and build them and make them better as well. From a plumber, electrician, carpenter, pretty much weld and do pretty much anything. So I expect all my people to be able to do the same thing and mentor them and help them along.
All right, Matthew's response.
In response to the question about involving residents, Matthew says, be as transparent as possible. I believe everyone in this community has a right to know how things are going to be run, what's going on, and their voice should be heard and reflected in the leadership. And regarding his primary leadership quality, he says his work ethic.
All right, Brian and Tim, you're up.
Well, as far as almost all of us, when we had to familiarize ourselves to run for candidacy, we had to become familiar with the Open Act. And the Open Act is to be as transparent as possible to the township, because if it has anything to do to affect that township, they are to know. And that's what I believe it needs to be, 100% transparency. I'm as transparent as you can be. If you get, I'll answer the question to a fault. Might not like my answer, but that's what I'm gonna answer it. And unfortunately, running businesses and everyday life, you're not gonna make everybody happy. And that's something that nobody said yet. So you might as well get ready. Somebody's not gonna like what's gonna happen. Period. Bottom line. There's no way you're gonna make everybody happy. You know? So we're gonna do our best to be as transparent. As far as communication, I mean, the Nextdoor Poetry app's great and the website's great. We gotta go back old school. Not everybody wants to bang around on the computer. We need to sit here because we can get the flyers. There's a whopping 2 businesses that are open to the public, and that is Tar and Kevin and M's, and that's ours for Poetry and Postal. They've been fortunate enough to put newsletters out at those places. So if somebody just wants to do some old-fashioned reading, they can come pick them up there at the stores. If it comes down to where we need to get some signage, something out to say town hall meetings or questions or anything, just communication that way. Because like they said, there's a lot of folks that's not here tonight. There's probably a lot of folks that's still not aware what's going on, what's happening at these meetings and stuff. So, you know, word of mouth is key to the whole thing here. You know, and as far as anything else on why I believe that I should be able to run and do what I can do for this community is, you know, a lot of us in this room that farm and ranch, that's a 7-day-a-week job. It don't ever stop. This ice storm proved that to a lot of us. And that's how we helped our neighbors out. You know, a lot of our tractors didn't fire up. Who would ever thought our stuff was going to gel up? We never thought it was going to happen. We busted ice 7 days in a row, you know, all day long, feeding cattle and helping everybody out. These jobs don't stop. And I commend all these folks that are doing these committees and this, that, and the other. That's great. But unfortunately, there's a lot of us folks that we've got stuff that's still going. You know, come summertime, our hay businesses and this, that, and the other, and our other cow operations, we're running nonstop. It's weather related. If it's still rolling, I like to praise the Lord on Sunday. But at the same time, unfortunately, if it's a Sunday I gotta keep rolling, I've gotta roll. I mean, that's just how it works, you know. So I don't have a problem working. There ain't many. In my moving company, there's not many young boys can even keep up with me at 52 years old. So as far as putting in and doing what I can do for this community, I'm gonna work as hard as I can. So I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
You can't be passionate like that, folks. You really can't. I want to commend everybody who's been up here and everybody who's taken time out of their schedules, and some schedules are much busier than others. But as far as the direct answer to the question, they kind of go together to me. And one of the ways that I would make sure that people are engaged is to practice listening. Whether that's at a town meeting, whether that's through an email on Nextdoor. If somebody drives up into my front yard, please don't do that. I get a little twitchy. But you know, if somebody does and they have a smile, then that's fine too. But we have to listen so that we know what everybody else needs out of the community. This is not one person moving forward. We have to know and come together, and active listening is a big part of that. So my primary leadership skill there would be the listening, and then being able to transition what I've heard, even complex topics, into something that's easy to consume and something that's easy to distribute so that people can understand both sides of an argument. Thanks.
All right, Stephen, you're up. You're our last one, and then we'll go to the mayor.
So yeah, as far as leadership qualities, I'm a servant leader. I like to do things. I don't like to sit around and talk too much. Let's make a decision and let's get out there and do it. So also, as far as engagement and getting residents involved, man, I tell you what, I think communication is the main thing here. Because like for our family, we didn't know we saw that, started seeing poetry crowd signs going up, like, what's going on? So we kind of had to dig a little and find out what's going on, and oh man, it's going to be an election about what? What's on the, so we did our own digging and research on that, and then we had to find out about the meetings. We had to dig on that, and so we were sort of in the dark, because I'm not a ag guy, I mean, I have bees, so. But, so I'm an assistant principal at high school. That's a 17-hour-a-day job, guys, and I don't know what's going on, so I have to do my own research, but we love living here. I want to be involved, I want to be helpful. So my whole thing is getting communication out there. It's finding some way to get everybody involved and informed, and that's what I really want to do. And if that's a centralized website or a newsletter, which thanks guys for stuff in the letters, I don't know who's doing that, but the newsletter to the water bill, yes, that's a good thing. So, that's my whole thing, serving leadership and communication.
All right, now we're gonna go to Tara and Chad. You guys can just give us your last bit there on how are you gonna involve them, and then
Could you ask the question one more
Yes.
time so I can?
the question actually says, how would you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in the city, and what would you describe as your primary leadership quality?
Okay, so I think I kind of have a blended answer of a little bit of everyone I've heard here, and I think the eventual answer has to be a combination of a little bit of the above. So we have old school thinking, which is, I don't have internet, I don't have communication that way, or I maybe don't have good enough internet, so it's not worth the cost of somebody putting up a giant tower. Or old school newsletters, mailers, that kind of thing, which is kind of a blended. And then the third one I heard was word of mouth. I think the answer is it's as everyone said, it's to make sure that every single person gets the message. The problem is, if you don't have internet, you can't join a Facebook group, you can't join a Nextdoor app, so you're kind of cut all the way down. And the problem with the Nextdoor app and some Facebook groups is it's almost like anyone around within a mile or 5 miles is in our conversations. And one of the good things, and there's only about one or two, that when I used to live in an HOA, is when you join the Facebook group, you actually had to provide your address, and the council approves you in, make sure you actually live there. And you can't have all these extra people that don't actually have addresses there, and you have to, make sure you're a poetrarian. So the idea is we want to make sure that the citizens of Poetry are actually the ones that are in these groups. So I definitely would second and number one, like I mentioned earlier, bringing some basic, decent internet to everyone is the first step. Once they get to that first step, we have our meetings. We have to have it not only town halls, but as you know, this is 1/10 or 20th of the population. We have to record these like we're doing. We have to actually maybe live stream them. So some of us, because we're so busy, cannot go out to the meetings all the time. It's hectic, it's life, it's what it is. But I can sit on my couch at 11 o'clock at night when my day stops. I can press play, and I can watch the meeting, and I can watch the answers. That's kind of, I think, how we have to do it. In a combination of somebody else that said, word of mouth. Well, what's even better than word of mouth, because this is word of mouth and this is all we have, is how about word of forwarding videos and links to everybody's phone and cell phone and emails? Because if everybody had a video of this, we could send it to everybody we know, then they can just look at it in their bed and press play. They're going to get the message. They're going to get it like they were actually there. So I think that's the most important thing, is to kind of connect that so we can all be connected as a city or a town. As far as my leadership capabilities, let's see, my business today, I'm the president and CEO of companies that have employ over 100 Texans today. Pre-corona, it was probably closer to 200. So I think that decision-making, being decisive, understanding the problems, and as a leader of a company, I'm always the judge and the jury. Everybody wants to jockey and position themselves, their department, and their argument to me like they are the one I should be siding with. But in the end, I think that decision-making, understanding all the facts, and cutting out all the stuff that shouldn't be in there, I think that's one of my most best leadership qualities.
Okay, so I think the first question was, how do we communicate with our citizens? So we roughly have, maybe 60, 70 people here. Our town proper has over 2,000 citizens, so obviously we have a gap there. We probably have over 3,000 in the surrounding ETJ area. So any and all. Okay, so I personally have made 4,200 newsletters, okay, with the help of a few people, and I'm thankful to the heart readers for finally putting that, because the first one was really rough. Took about 10 hours, and we had Amy help us fold some. But so I'm really thankful to the Poetry Water Supply for allowing us to insert those on the Poetry Post. So we're doing that, currently trying to communicate for those who are low tech. Not everyone wants to be high tech, and I respect that as well. So we, if we can disseminate that information via Nextdoor, but again, there's only a fraction of our citizens who are on Nextdoor, Poetry Next Door. We also have, I think there's a Poetry Texas Facebook page. Thankfully, Lori Witten was able to give us the poetrytx.org. So my husband and I were able to create the unofficial website, which we're now enjoying. And so, hopefully we can streamline that forward and give that to the community. And we solicit your input on that as well. You're allowed to put questions and put your input on that website if you so choose. Also on the newsletter, we were asking for your input on votes. We want to have your input, absolutely. To transition into what I think my strength might be, what my husband thought were two different things. I feel like I put everything before the Lord. I pray continually before I do most anything. My husband said, you've learned to listen well. I have some ministry training, and I've had to learn to listen well. I love people, and I love to hear their stories, and I love to listen well. It's very important to me to have integrity and to be honest. I've strived to do that since I was 14. I think what my husband said is, you really can listen, organize, disseminate information, and then bring it all together. So for instance, I feel like I can listen to an attorney, the road foreman, and then listen to several of our citizens and put it all together for the best possible solution for poetry.
Thank you so much. All right, so that kind of sums up the questions that we were going to ask him tonight. But before we all jump up and run out and go make dinner, I want to go through all the names real quick of everyone and have them stand up so that you can have a face with a name. Also, if you go to poetrytexas.org, that's the unofficial website of our town now. On there are some of the bios, and as we get the rest of them in, of course this is all volunteers, so it takes us a little bit of time. I'm really a rancher, I'm not an internet person, so it takes a little bit of time to get all that done. So their pictures will be there, but I want you to have that one more chance to match the face with the name tonight, okay? And I want to tell you too real quick, I love this community. My family has been here for forever, and I know almost all of these friends, and some of them I've known their entire lives. And my heart is right here in this area. I've been able to work with a lot of you guys, meet you along the way. It has been an honor and a blessing to be able to be a part of building where we are to even now. So there's been so many people that we've been able to meet along the way, and I am more than amazed at the blessing that God has given this community. I've been able to work with a lot of nonprofits and things outside of this area. The love that's in this room is unreal to me, okay? It's like something from a fairy tale. The way that these men and Tara are handling themselves is magical, okay? And I'm seeing this and I'm thinking, this is what Poetry Proud is. So no matter who you elect, just continue to lift them up and know that the next couple of months may be, as we talk about hard topics, they may be a little uneasy for some of us, but just, the word is love your neighbor through it, right? Okay? Love each other as we try to figure out, as we're that baby trying to grow, love each other through it, nurture each other through it, and I just can't wait to see what God does in this area with us. It's already, from where I stand, it's already miracles all the way around me. So the future is bright for us. So I wanted to say that real quick. All right, so mayoral candidates, Chad. Say your last name for me real quick in the microphone, Chad.
Chad David DeLita.
Chad David DeLita. And then Tara.
Tara Marlo Sinkovich.
Real loud one more time.
Tara Marlo Sinkovich.
And then Matthew Dennis is the fireman that is not here tonight. And then Brian.
Brian Vincent.
And Tim.
Tim Smith.
Stephen.
Stephen Welsh.
Terry.
Terry Fowler.
Tom.
Tom Anderson.
Bo. Say it like it says on the ballot.
Ryan Bo Scott.
Ryan Bo Scott. And Robert. Not Ringo. Ryan Bo.
Robert Herman.
Okay, wait, hold on.
Robert Herman.
Okay, Mike.
Mike Jaffe.
Simeon.
Simeon White.
Clyde.
Clyde Sermon.
All right, these are your candidates. If we could give them a round of applause for coming tonight. How many are we going to elect? There's 5 positions for the council and 1 mayor, okay? So on your ballot, you'll pick 5 out of the 11 and then 1 out of the 2, okay? And you will vote here. It is on May 1st. And it doesn't matter what county you live in, you come here to vote, okay? So please be sure and spread that word as well. We have had some talks about trying to get some signs out. All of that costs a lot of money, okay? It's cost a lot to just get it here. So please spread the word. We do have the website, the Facebook pages, and the mail outs. And just anybody that can help is great. If you want to help or volunteer with any of that, just let us know. So thank you guys for coming.